And when everything happened, the banks froze everything up.
If you ask me, oh, Wendy, I need, $5,000, my rent is backed up and I'm about to be thrown out.
Y'all, what you're about to hear isn't just another celebrity breakup. This is an alleged betrayal so deep, so calculated, it might completely change how you see everything about Wendy Williams' life. Because behind the cameras, behind the smiles, there are claims of a woman breaking down while the people closest to her were allegedly building a life off her. We're talking about a moment when Wendy was reportedly at her weakest, battling illness, fighting addiction, struggling to even stand, and yet the money never stopped flowing. The show had to go on, but the question is, who was really benefiting? Now here's where it gets disturbing. Her own son, Kevin Hunter Jr., is stepping forward, not with rumors, but with explosive accusations. Claims that his father, Kevin Hunter, along with Sharina Hudson, allegedly drained Wendy emotionally, mentally, and financially. And it doesn't stop there. There are whispers of control of legal power plays, even an alleged plan to take over her fortune while she couldn't fight back. Let that sink in. A mother struggling to survive, and a system around her allegedly collapsing her from inside out. This isn't just drama anymore. This is a story of power, manipulation, and a son who says he's finally ready to expose everything. And trust me, what comes next only gets darker.
And our son's in Miami. So I have to be calm on the phone with him, like a loving mother.
Y'all, this story doesn't start with betrayal. It starts with silence. For years, Wendy Williams was the loudest voice in the room, exposing celebrities, calling out scandals, controlling the narrative. But behind that powerful image, something else was quietly unraveling. Because while the world watched her speak, there are allegations that behind closed doors, she was losing control of her own life. It didn't happen overnight. At first, it was subtle. A stumble here, a strange pause there. Fans noticed moments where Wendy looked disoriented, tired, disconnected. Then came the collapses, the unexplained absences, the emotional breakdowns on live television, and eventually the truth surfaced. Graves' disease, alcohol struggles, mental exhaustion. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because according to multiple claims, while Wendy was fighting to stay afloat, someone close to her was allegedly making sure she never stopped working. That someone, Kevin Hunter, the man who wasn't just her husband, but also her manager. The man who controlled her schedule, her business decisions, and allegedly, her access to everything she built. And insiders have long whispered the same thing, that even when Wendy was at her weakest, she was still being pushed to perform. To show up. To smile. To deliver.
In life, stuff happens, and it's okay. I've still got a very full life that I really endured.
Because the money had to keep coming in. But where was that money really going? That's the question that refuses to go away. Because while Wendy was allegedly breaking down, there are growing accusations that another life was being built in the shadows. A second world. One filled with designer bags, luxury apartments, expensive gifts, and a woman at the center of it all, Sharina Hudson. For years, her name stayed in the background. Quiet, untouched. But now, she's at the center of a storm. Because the claims are explosive. That while Wendy worked, Sharina lived. That while Wendy struggled, someone else thrived. And that the source of it all was the same bank account. Wendy's. And if that wasn't enough, what comes next changes everything. Because this isn't just about a husband. Or a mistress. This is about a son, Kevin Hunter Jr. For a long time, he stayed out of it. Quiet, observing, watching his family fall apart from the inside. But now something has shifted. Because according to recent reports and statements, Kevin Jr. is no longer staying silent. In fact, he's doing the exact opposite. He's speaking. And what he's saying is shaking everything. Allegedly, he believes his father didn't just betray Wendy, he exploited her. That during the most vulnerable period of her life, when she was struggling physically, mentally, emotionally, decisions were being made around her that she may not have fully controlled. Decisions involving money, power, access, and perhaps most disturbing of all, control. Because there are claims that go even further. Whispers that after the divorce, after the public fallout, after everything was supposed to be over, there was still a plan. An alleged attempt to re-enter Wendy's life, not out of love, but out of necessity. Financial necessity. Some even claim that Kevin wanted to position himself as something far more powerful than an ex-husband, a guardian, someone who could legally step in and take control of Wendy's finances at a time when her ability to manage them was being questioned. Think about that. A woman who built an empire, suddenly at risk of losing control over it. And the person allegedly trying to step in? The same man accused of benefiting from her downfall. But this time, things are different. Because Wendy may have been silent, but her son isn't. And as Kevin Jr. begins to speak, the story is no longer being told from the outside. It's coming from inside the family. And if even half of these allegations are true, then what we're looking at isn't just a scandal. It's something much darker. And this is only the beginning. But if you thought the story ended with exposure, this is where it actually gets dangerous. Because once the money stopped, everything changed. After the divorce between Wendy Williams and Kevin Hunter, there was still one powerful link holding them together: alimony. A steady flow of money that, according to multiple claims, allowed Kevin to maintain a lifestyle he could no longer sustain on his own. Luxury didn't disappear tonight, just shifted sources. And for a while it worked. But then something unexpected happened. Wendy's show, the very engine behind that financial flow, began to collapse. Absences turned into cancellations. Guest hosts replaced her. And eventually, the unthinkable. The show was gone. And with it, the money pipeline. That's when the panic allegedly set in. Because without Wendy's income, everything Kevin had built, or depended on, started to crack. Reports began surfacing that he was struggling financially, falling behind on bills, even claiming he could lose his home. But instead of stepping away, he leaned in, harder than ever. Because what came next wasn't just a legal move. It was, according to critics, a desperate attempt to regain control. Kevin filed claims, demands, accusations. He argued that Wendy had violated their agreement, that he was owed money, that he needed support. But the public wasn't buying it. Not anymore. Because by this point, a new voice had entered the conversation, and it was impossible to ignore. Kevin Hunter Jr. And this time, he wasn't just speaking. He was revealing patterns. According to Kevin Jr., this wasn't a sudden shift in behavior. This was years in the making. A cycle of control, manipulation, and financial dependency that had been quietly operating behind the scenes. And one moment from the past suddenly took on a whole new meaning. The incident. The one people try to forget. When Kevin Jr., just 18 years old, got into a physical altercation with his own father. At the time, it was dismissed as a heated argument, a family dispute gone too far. But now, it looks different, because insiders claim that confrontation wasn't random. It was triggered by something much deeper: frustration over money, over control, over watching his mother being drained while someone else lived comfortably. And when you connect that moment to everything being revealed now, it paints a chilling picture. A son who saw the truth early, but wasn't ready or able to stop it. Until now. Because now, Kevin Jr. isn't just reacting, he's intervening. There are reports suggesting he has taken an active role in protecting his mother, staying close, monitoring the situation, and refusing to let history repeat itself. Especially as new concerns emerge about Wendy's condition and her ability to manage her own affairs. Which brings us to the most unsettling part of all, the idea of guardianship. Because when someone is declared unable to handle their finances, control doesn't just disappear. It transfers. And according to ongoing speculation, there were fears that Kevin could position himself to receive that control. Legally, quietly, permanently. But that door may have just slammed shut. Because with Kevin Jr. stepping forward with legal teams involved and with public scrutiny an all-time high, the balance of power is shifting, and not in Kevin's favor. Even the courts, according to reports, have started pushing back, rejecting certain demands, denying financial requests, and forcing him to face a reality he may have avoided for years. No more automatic money, no more easy access, no more control. And as for Sharina Hudson, the woman who allegedly benefited from it all, she's now caught in the fallout. Because when the money dries up, so does the illusion. And suddenly, the life that once looked untouchable starts to look fragile, uncertain, exposed. Meanwhile, Wendy, the woman at the center of it all, remains in recovery. Out of the spotlight, but not out of the story. Because everything that's happening now is still connected to her. Her money, her health, her past, and possibly her future. But this time, there's a difference. She's no longer completely alone. Because the one person who watched everything unfold is now standing in front of it. And if Kevin Jr. continues to speak, then what comes next won't just be uncomfortable. It will be explosive. And just when it seemed like the chaos had reached its peak, the narrative took another turn. Because this isn't just a story about what happened in the past. It's about what could still happen next. As Wendy Williams slowly begins to re-emerge from the shadows, reports of recovery, whispers of a comeback, even talks of a podcast, a new question starts circulating behind the scenes. What happens when she finally speaks? Because for years, Wendy was the one asking the questions. Now, she is the question. And if she decides to break her silence, not as a host, but as a survivor of everything that allegedly happened behind closed doors, it could change everything. For Kevin Hunter, for Sharina Hudson, for everyone. Because the timing couldn't be more critical. Kevin is no longer in control. The financial flow that once sustained him has reportedly dried up. Legal setbacks have weakened his position. Public opinion has shifted, and not in his favor. And yet, there are still fears. Because when someone has spent years allegedly depending on another person's wealth, walking away isn't always that simple. Especially when that wealth still exists. Especially when that person is still vulnerable. That's why insiders say the situation remains volatile, unpredictable, Because even though the system around Wendy has changed, financial oversight, legal protection, tighter control, the history hasn't disappeared. And neither have the intentions, at least, according to those closest to the situation. But this time, there's a new variable. A barrier that didn't exist before. Kevin Hunter Jr. And he's not just watching anymore. He's actively standing between his mother and everything that once surrounded her. Sources suggest he's become increasingly protective, not just emotionally, but strategically. Aware of the past. Alert to any sign of manipulation. Ready to challenge anything that even remotely resembles the patterns he claims to have seen before. Because to him, this isn't just history. It's unfinished business. And that changes everything. Because now, any attempt to re-enter Wendy's life won't go uncontested. Any move will be watched, questioned, exposed. And that pressure? It's building. Online, the conversation is exploding. Fans are no longer just spectators, they're investigators. Breaking down timelines, connecting dots, replaying old clips with new context. And the more they look, the more they question. Was Wendy truly in control all those years? Or was there something happening behind the scenes that no one fully understood? Even comparisons are being drawn, unsettling ones. Stories of powerful women, isolated, controlled, financially drained, only for the truth to come out too late. And that's where the fear sets in. Because for all the progress Wendy may be making now, the damage has already been done. Years of pressure, years of alleged manipulation, years of silence. You don't just walk away from that. You carry it. And as she steps closer to the public eye again, the stakes get higher. Because if she speaks, really speaks, it won't just be a comeback. It will be a reckoning. A moment where everything that was hidden comes into the light. And for those who were part of that darkness, there may be nowhere left to hide. But until that moment comes, the tension remains. Thick, unresolved, waiting. Because this story isn't over. Not even close. In fact, the most explosive chapter may be the one we haven't seen yet. And just when you think this story has reached its breaking point, this is where everything could truly explode. Because if Wendy Williams decides to finally speak, not as a host, not as a celebrity, but as someone who allegedly lived through manipulation, betrayal, and control, then this entire narrative flips overnight. Names could be called out. Details could surface. And the version of events we've been hearing? It might only be the surface. Meanwhile, Kevin Hunter is already under pressure. Legal losses, financial strain, public opinion turning colder by the day. And now, with Kevin Hunter Jr. stepping forward and refusing to stay silent, the wall around this situation is closing in fast. Because this isn't just a family feud anymore. This is about power, control, money. And the question everyone is asking, but no one can fully answer yet, how far did this really go? And if the allegations involving Sharina Hudson are even partially true, then what we're looking at isn't just scandal. It's a calculated system that may have operated in plain sight for years. So now the pressure is building. Fans are watching, the internet is digging, and the silence, it's getting louder. Because one statement, one interview, one moment of truth could change everything. The real question is, who breaks first? And when they do, will it expose everything or reveal something even darker? Stay close, because this story isn't cooling down. It's heating up.